Hello, it's James here from Horse Race Ratings, and this is the tutorial for the Horse Race Ratings Basic Race Cards. Now, these is a brand new product or brand new subscription option to Horse Race Ratings that I released maybe just over a week ago. I have made some subtle changes and adjustments to this, so you get a better idea of some of the differences between some of the ratings, and I've added a few kind of identifiable markers to that. So what I'll quickly do is just run through some basic kind of controls as part of navigation. So here we have a clear button, so this is anything to do with, as you can see now, just York is selected here, but if I click on the clear button, it'll pull back all of the races for today. And the information button here is actually a race card key, so it'll tell you what each of the fields in the ratings actually relates to and some information regarding that. In terms of navigation, obviously we have an option here to select the track, and we have an option to select the race. Now this will pre-filter based on your selection type, so if you only wanted to look through the races at York, you can click on York and it'll pull back the times for York. If you wanted to just go through race by race, it'll obviously, here it'll do likewise, so it'll pull through the 1 o'clock and it'll let you know that it's actually at Worcester. But you do get that here on the race details element as well, so you've got an option there to check for that as well. And as you scroll through the race times, obviously the track and the race details update. So I'm just going to concentrate on York as a purpose for this tutorial, and I'll give some pointers along the way in terms of what the actual ratings mean and things to look out for when kind of analysing races. So let's just kick off with the York 140 as an example. And if you look at this here, we have the race details section on the top. So this basically just confirms the track, the race time, the name of the race, obviously, so this year's the Jorvik Handicap, gives you the code, the race type, the race category type. Now, on any fields here, you can actually expand, or you can actually, when you get those, the dual arrows, you can double click and it'll resize appropriately. So you get race category type, you get the class of race, you get the distance, any age restriction, so this race is for 4-year-olds upwards only. The going, now the going is done as per the night before, so if there is significant rainfall, occasionally what I might do is I might rerun the ratings on that basis, but that's not very often. There's prize money to the winner and the direction of the track, so the York is left-handed. Obviously you have to weigh that obviously with the distance of the race. Obviously York has 5 furlongs and 6 furlongs, I think, on the straight. I think the 7 furlongs incorporates the first turn, so kind of weigh that up as well. So that gives you the race details, and that updates as you see as you go through. You'll see here where obviously the race updates. So obviously here we've got a non-handicap, and that's also a non-handicap category. Now race category type could be things like a maiden, can be things like a seller, a claimer, and obviously over the jumps there's a bigger range of that, because you can get things like novice hurdles, maiden hurdles, handicap hurdles, etc. So that's what the race category type is. Let's just go back to the 140. Now, in terms of the race card and the ratings, so we have, obviously you've got the key here to obviously reference, but you have card number, so this is the number that's printed in the various kind of media, so they're obviously shared with all of the bookmakers, etc. Now, card number is normally associated by the weight being carried. So number 1 would mean the highest weight, all the way down to the lowest weight would be the highest number. So number 15 here is the lowest weight at 120. Then you have stall, so this is the draw that the horse has been given. And then you have HRR. So HRR is the horse race rating. That's the primary rating for horse race ratings. Now, Behind this, obviously on the pro ratings, you get a huge, or the kind of the standard monthly ratings, you get a huge amount of more data. So things like a speed rating, a last race rating, a trainer rating, a jockey rating, there's a rating on today's conditions. All of that is pulled together along with how well the ratings perform. So there's an overall race rating that factors in everything with regards to the horse, the trainer, the stallion, last race speed, etc. That is also kind of included in the standard and the pro. What the HRR rating does, it actually factors in the strike rate performance of the ratings themselves as well as. So that's why sometimes you might get a horse that's very, very clear in terms of the ratings themselves, but they may not be top rated, and that's because the ratings actually factor in how well all of the different categories perform in this type of race. And that goes from track right through to code, race type, race category type, and class of race. I haven't got down to the distance level yet because there's not enough data to make that viable, but the best level is down to class of race. So that's what the HRR rating is. It factors in everything from horse right through to stallion and anything in between, but then also factors in the performance of the ratings themselves. So it calculates the strike rate for each of the various categories, of which there's kind of 11 categories, and it adds those strike rates together, combines that with the overall horse, trainer, jockey performance, and that's how you get the HRR rating. So there's scores behind each one of these. The WSR here is the win strike rate based on this rating in this type of race. So the win strike rate is actually quite low for this type of race. It's actually 12%. The third rated here is actually the highest at 14% win strike rate. PFT is profit. That is the profit to Betfair SPs minus a 2% commission. And that gives you the overall profit. If you back the second rated in these types of races at York, you would have a £40 profit to a £1 level stake at Betfair SPs for a 13% strike rate. PSR is a play strike rate, and obviously that is covered there, so very similar aspect. The top rated only wins 12% of the time, but actually places 43% of the time. Horse name is very, very clear. Now, what I have done is I've added from what you guys would have seen on the basic ratings already, these little stars, and I'll cover those shortly. So the black star here, or the filled star here, just highlights the top rated. So it's a very, very quick visual to say, okay, that is top rated, but it should be in that order anyway. You then have the horse name, which obviously then also has 3 stars. Now, one is full, one is half full, and one is empty. This gives you the horse performance rating, which is the PR. So this is the performance race rating of the horse only, and I'll explain that shortly, plus the overall HRR rating. So this is something slightly different, and I'll explain that shortly. So this tells you the top 3. So Ilarab here is the top rated in that by combining HRR with the PRR rating, so the horse performance rating. And then you also have the second, which would be Mr. Carpenter, and third in this particular race is Rhythmic Intent. We then have a value rating. So this is the HVR, so the horse race ratings value rating. And this is basically based purely on profit in this type of race. So Luigi Vampa is the horse that would, in this type of race, actually produces the biggest value. Now, here you see obviously a profit for HRR at plus £8. But this value rating here factors in all of the other ratings. So a bit like HRR, from all the ratings and the scores on that basis, plus the performance of the ratings from a win strike rate standpoint, the value rating here purely looks at profit. So across all the various rating categories that you don't get on the basic race cards, this gives you the overall value rating. So the highest profit combined across all the various rating categories that Horse Race Ratings has. So sometimes, obviously, if you get quite a high strike rate from a HRR perspective, regardless of where the horse is rated. So in this particular race here, Luigi Vampa is ranked number 14, or rated number 14 in this type of race. It's a 6% strike rate, 20% place strike rate, but offers the best value. So obviously you need to kind of look at that and factor that in to see as part of your calculation in actually reading the race itself. The odds column here is the Horse Race Ratings forecasted odds. I have about 50 different formulas that factor in the odds. So depending on that, they move up and down the odds ranges. And to be fair, they are actually pretty accurate, and you can find quite a bit of value by looking at the odds ranges compared to live prices with bookmakers or especially with the exchanges. We then have the sex of the horse, and we have the horse form, the age of the horse. That's all fairly self-explanatory. This is all standard race card information. The official rating. These two columns here, so OR plus or minus, that is an increase on the official rating from the horse's last run in this type of race. So basically flat turf handicap, for example, or a flat turf race. Same for an all-weather race. So if a horse moves from code to code, it'll only pick up the rating difference from the last time it ran on turf. So if Ilarab, for example's last run was on the all-weather, this figure here wouldn't be calculated that way. It only looks back at the last running on turf. So Ilarab, on its last running on turf, has actually been put up £7, but it's actually running in the same class of race. So the CL1 here has that horse gone up or down in class. So if you look at the bottom rated here, My Falke, he's actually come down in official ratings, and he's actually gone up 1 in terms of class. So he's running here 1 in a class 2 race, but in his previous race he would have raced in a class 3. So that just gives you a quick kind of marker on has a horse gone up in the weights from its last run. Then there's DSLR, again pretty standard. So this is days since last race. So Ilarab's been off the course for 214 days. And then we have weight. So this is weight in pounds that the horse is carrying. So Ilarab is kind of second here in terms of the weights. It's carrying 135 pounds. Top weighted here is Win O'Clock, because obviously he's card number 1. Is carrying 136. Then we have any headgear. So this will be any headgear that the horse has been declared to running. So tongue tie, cheek pieces, visor, cheek pieces. If it's a combination, that information will show there. And then we have the C&D form as well. So Ilarab has won at the course, but then you've got Rhythmic Intent has won at the course and also over the distance. There's a slight gap there. So if you look at Mr. Carpenter has won at the course and at the distance at the course. So that's what the C&D is. Now draw here, these flags are basically marked depending on the draw based on previous race history that I have and based on a win strike rate. So green is a positive draw. Yellow is a kind of a neutral draw. It's neither positive or negative, and red is a negative draw as well. And that actually comes down to looking at also at distance level. So it looks at the actual code, the race type, and the distance level. So that would factor in, obviously, come in. If you look at Chester, for example, if you're drawn out wide, generally it's going to be very, very negative. Then this is a new thing that I've added in for the basic race cards, is the pace. So this gives you based on the horse's previous run style. It's something that I have worked on quite extensively. It is getting better all of the time. But principally, the larger the bar, the more prominent the horse is likely to run. So it's going to have very much a front running style. The smaller the bar, like with Mike Frankel here, based on the previous runs, it's more than likely going to be held up. If it's obviously in the middle, the horse has either raced prominently or has been held up, or generally runs mid-div from the get-go. So that's what the pace bar is. Then we have the performance rating. Now the performance rating here is basically a horse's overall performance from a win strike rate, but also a place strike rate, but it's weighted much more heavily to the win strike rates, but it also factors in a score based on place strike rates based on the number of runs a horse has had. So, but that's a number of runs overall. So this is what the all column is. So this is all races. How often has that horse won and or placed? There's a GO is for going. Now remember, you have this information here on the race key. CNC is code and category. So again, flat turf, handicap or flat non-handicap. And then we've got course and distance. So at the track and over the distance. Then course in its own rights and distance in its own rights. Now, again, the stars signify here the strike rates of that. So a full star is a high strike rate. A half star is a kind of a positive strike rate. And an empty star is a decent strike rate, but it's not as big as the other two. If there is no information, it's either based on one or two things. One, the horse hasn't run on that going previously, or two, it has run on that going, but it has no marker in terms of it hasn't actually won or placed on that particular going. So what happens is, so where you can see here, my Carpenter is got a horse performance rating of 1, and it's quite easy to see that because the actual markers here across all the various horse performance categories, you can see that it's actually got quite a lot of stars there. Second is Ilarab. Again, when you look at the stars, and if they're full or half full, again you can quite clearly see that it's obviously a very positive, a good positive for Ilarab, as well as my Carpenter. And obviously when you see the third rated here for Thorn Rhythmic Intent, you can see that that's quite positive as well. As you can see, there's this black box which pops up. That's basically just a pop-up. It just basically pulls in some of the information as you scroll down. So you're not clicking on anything here, you're just scrolling down. On the main standard or the pro ratings, when you do that, it actually brings up the horse's form and gives you a lot more stats as well. But on here, it just brings back just some text information as a hover. It basically just replicates the information in here. Okay, then we get jockey, which is obviously pretty standard. JC is jockey claim, so that would tell you if a jockey is a claimer, and it tells you the weight that the jockey is actually claiming. Then you've got trainer, self-explanatory, and stallion, self-explanatory. Now the colour code in here. Green is a positive strike rate. Again, this is on the race cards. Green means that that jockey is in form in the last 7 days. So the highlighting here is form based on recency. So Ryan Moore has been riding very, very well. Has had a lot of winners in the last 7 days. Yellow means it's a good positive strike rate, and red means obviously it's also that jockey is also performing quite well, but it's not as well as a green highlighting or a green rating or a yellow rating. Where there is no rating, it just means that predominantly that the strike rate is less than 10% in the last 7 days. And that's the same principle for trainer, and it's the same principle for stallion. Now the stallion here, this one, the colour code in here is based on the last 30 days. One of the things that I did when I set up the ratings, I found trends of horses, mainly because of the going, but also because of time of year, that horses actually perform better or stallions and their offspring perform better at certain time periods. So whereas the trainer and jockey is based on the last 7 days, the stallion is actually based on the 30-day period. And again, this is explained on the race key where you can see by clicking over here. Now the black stars here are where a trainer and the jockey, so where a jockey rides for that particular trainer, where they're in excellent form over the last 7 days. Now that's based on the 35% plus strike rate in the last 7 days. There is also one for a stallion. Now where that does appear, that means the stallion has a very good record at the track and at the code. So either as a flat in handicaps or flat in non-handicaps. So you would see the same thing where they've got a very high strike rate on that basis. So that covers the race cards themselves. Now let's go through some of the races from today as examples based on that information. So we can see Ilarab won the first race and it was top rated, but it also comes out quite well based on the overall horse race ratings, but taking into account also the horse performance. So that is actually ranked number 1 and did perform very well and also won that particular race. And we can also see that William Haggis has been in fairly decent form in the last 7 days. So quite a positive race for Ilarab on that basis. The other one here that you could have factored in at obviously a much bigger price, and also kind of consider the odds here as well. So where I have the odds here and maybe the price is bigger on the exchanges, then you know that based on all the information to hand, you are getting a bit of value. So Mr. Carpenter also would have been one that I possibly would have considered on this, but then I would have delved deeper at that point to look at obviously the previous runs that horse has had, and you could also see here from Mr. Carpenter's standpoint, he's actually way behind on official ratings, so he would have to go some to obviously have some major improvement to beat the likes of an Ilarab, for example. So that gives you a fairly clear view of that particular race. If we go on to the 210, the 210 was won by, let me just double check who the 210 was won by. Just bear with me a second while I do this in the background. And excuse if you can hear the little yapping, that's my dog. So Mr. Lupton won the second race. He actually came from off the pace and won that pretty well. So Mr. Lupton here, you can see actually that particular rating has got a very positive. So rating number 6 has got a very positive profit, but the strike rate is not great. The play strike rate is not horrific, but this would be a race that I wouldn't normally get over involved in. He falls outside the top 3 in terms of the overall rating and horse performance, and then on horse performance alone, he does actually come in 3rd here, and Paul Hannigan has obviously had a few winners in the last 7 days. Now, ordinarily for me, that wouldn't be a race that I would want to get involved in. There's no clear view on that particular race. Aberama Gold comes out on top here, but you're not getting much value for him on that basis, because he's actually ranked the worst, or one of the worst in terms of value. The draw is a bit of a negative as well, but the reason why he's more than likely at the top is because he has been performing consistently. You can see that from his form figures. He's running in the same class. He hasn't gone up in the weights, and the trainer and jockey are obviously in very, very good form as well. So that would be why Aberama Gold would be top of the ratings here. But just on the other slight negatives, that would be a race that I wouldn't particularly get involved in on that particular basis. On the 240 race, now Mullatham actually comes out quite well on the ratings. He offers a lot of value. He's got strong strike rating here. But the one thing that you need to factor in on this basis, and also because the fact that Roger Varian has also been in very good form, and so is Jim Crowley and Roger Varian together. But when you look at the horse performance angle, he's only coming in at number 6. So that would just throw a few question marks to me. And then when you look at further down the ratings, you can see here Starman comes out on top in terms of the... Now for him to come out on top when he's number 9 in the ratings is actually quite a big deal. So when you look across here to the horse performance rating, you can see here every single one of these is full. And that's because he has won at York, he has won over the course, he has won over distance, His one poor result came in a Group 1 on soft ground. So he's running in a lower grade of race here, and he's running back on good ground. So there were mitigating factors to his 0 place here when he came 14th. Also, when you look at the odds, he's actually forecasted to be quite well on the odds. And I think at the time he went off around 6.87s, and he did win that race. So even though he is not top rated overall, or top rated from a rating and overall kind of form angle, he is top rated based on the overall ratings plus the horse's historic performance. So Starman, even though he is far down the ratings, is quite a good option there. But you can see as well, you're not getting the great value in terms of returns. So with these slight adjustments that I've made here, this stands out a bit more for you with regards to then you probably normally wouldn't have picked that up before I added these little identifiers in here. So Starman comes out pretty well on the ratings, despite the fact that he is further down here. And that principally, as I said, is mainly to do with his run last time out, but also to do with the fact that Ed Walker and Oisin Murphy have not been in form in the last kind of 7 days or so as well. On to the 310, which was run by Snowfall. So here you can see now Snowfall actually comes second in the ratings. He comes third in the overall ratings plus the horse performance, which is obviously fine. But Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien have been in absolute flying form as a trainer, as a jockey, but also as a combination, and that's highlighted here. You can see there's not much horse performance to go by, principally because it's a non-handicap and the horses have not really raced a great deal. So Snowfall there, you could easily have backed, Mystery Angel and Snowfall. Noon Star was a slight negative in here for me, because obviously with his form, he is a bit further down the ratings on that basis. But Snowfall, put in a very, very good performance and won that race. But when you see that information with these few identifiers, you do get that, obviously, a slightly better indication of why Snowfall was here. The other thing with Snowfall you have to factor in as well is, even though the form figures are pretty poor here, Snowfall was running in Group 1 and Group 2 company from last year. The other horses were not. I think the best one in this was Mystery Angel, who won a listed race last time out, and I think Aurea placed in either Group 3 or a listed race. Or might have been a Class 3 race, might have won actually. I think it won a Class 3 race and placed in a listed race. So, even though you see the form figures here, you still need to do your little bit of research in terms of, okay, what is the horse form and what type of race was it running in. And you can see that from Snowfall here. Even though this is a Group 3, it's come down 2. So obviously that meant he ran in a Group 1 previously, because you got Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. So I hope that makes sense. So the 340 race was won by the bottom rated. Look, this is going to happen sometimes. Strangely enough, York is not one of the best tracks for the ratings. There would be no excuses as to why that was there. The horse does actually, strangely enough, come out on top in terms of the horse performance as a score. But again, you're working off quite limited data there. It's principally the going and the distance is the main factor, but overall as well in terms of its winning places. So despite the fact that the horse is right down the bottom of the ratings, it actually comes out third on the ratings plus the horse performance rating. So again, it gives you some idea of, okay, this horse is quite far down the ratings, but why is it a horse performance rating of 1 here? The other angle obviously would be the trainer. The trainer wouldn't be a trainer that would have a huge following, and you can actually see here a lot of these trainers are actually bang out of form in the last 7 days. And if you look at the jockeys as well, they're obviously bang out of form as well the last 7 days. So, and if you look at the stallions as well, not many stallions have had any form at all in this particular race. So a pretty wide open race. So this is where, if you do want to look at that, you just want to factor in, and maybe take a chance on a horse at a slightly bigger price further down the ratings. But again, that would have been a race that I probably wouldn't have got involved in. The one thing to say about Whoop Wob as well is the profit margin. Even though it's a 3% strike rate, it is plus 118, so you could have factored that in as well on that basis. The 415, one of my nap was going to be second win today, but obviously it was a non-runner. Obviously in this race, you have to be quite careful what you do here, because obviously you've got a range of newcomers. So in these types of races, I generally will follow the ratings, because in non-handicaps, whether it be novices, you have to take into account the value that you're getting. And second win ticked all of those boxes. But as I said, unfortunately, he was a non-runner. So in those types of races, you need to look at other things like trainer and jockey form, because you will get horses who are extremely well bred coming out of top yards. Because they haven't run, they will be further down the ratings. So that's where you also need to look at, am I getting value on that basis as well? But then also concentrating on jockey, trainer, and kind of stallion form over here. And then in the 450 race, actually, who won the 410 race? The 410 race was won by Project Dante. So if we just go back to the 415 race, so Project Dante was actually right at the bottom. So even on that basis, in terms of his breeding, by showcasing, trainer, when you consider some of the other trainers, and you're like Hannon, Haggis, Mark Johnston, so again, with those types of races, you've got to be fairly careful how you go about that when a clear rating topper second win is actually pulled out of the race. Then you've got to look at the other mitigating factors for the newcomers. So the 450 was won by Flying Solo. Propriety was second. Dubai Instinct was third at a huge price. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him down the bottom of the ratings, which he is. And then you had Lidford in fourth. So if you look at Flying Solo in this particular race, you can see here he actually comes out second on the overall horse ratings plus performance. But he actually offers the best value in here. Russell Ryan has obviously been in fairly decent form as well in the last 7 days. And the horse comes fifth in terms of the horse performance side. So there's quite a few little markers there that Flying Solo could be a decent selection. But there's one other key factor here that you need to look at. If you look at the win strike rate here, it's 22%. Now in a handicap, that's pretty decent. So Flying Solo for me in here would definitely have been one that I would have factored into my considerations. The only negative really would be kind of trainer form, but also the draw potentially. Now you can see here from a pace angle as well that he's been held up predominantly and come from off the pace. Now if you went back and looked at a couple of the other races, particularly the one that Mr. Lupton won, he actually came from off the pace as well. So, as races go through, you can kind of factor those things in if you kind of have got a bit more time to actually look at some of that information. But Flying Solo has got quite good HRR strike rate, profit and place strike rate kind of stats here, but then also comes out really well in terms of value and overall performance, coming second based on a 3 and a 5. So a 3 as a rating, as a race rating, and a strike rate rating, and then obviously a 5 from a horse performance rating here. So that gives you a very strong indication that Flying Solo would have had a fairly decent chance on that basis in that particular race. So hopefully that gives you a good indication based on the races at York today for obviously how the ratings actually work, what the information is behind the ratings, and you have got the race key here. So that's obviously concludes the tutorial for the basic ratings. I hope you found that very useful. Obviously, any questions for members, get into the Telegram group, or drop me a line through the website.